on FanDuel Sportsbook. If you've never bet on baseball before, now is the perfect time to give it a shot. FanDuel is letting new users swing for the fences risk-free. You'll get up to $1,000 back if your first bet doesn't win. And once you have an account, you can get up to $25 back each day if your same-game parlay bet falls one leg short. This way, you can combine multiple baseball bets for an even bigger win all season long. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app and set up with my promo code Hennig to get in on the baseball action and your first bet risk-free. That's promo code Hennig on FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older to play and present in NJRPA. First online real money wager only for risk-free bet. Refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Restrictions apply. See sportsbook.fanduel.com for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
A Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN, home of the Philadelphia Eagles.
They've got 'em!
WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City. This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Now, Sports Bash Saturday. Here's Josh Hennig.
Sports Bash Saturday, a 2-hour edition here on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And you might see a familiar face with a familiar background today. Kevin McCormick joining us live as well, as he's our guest co-host for the Saturday show today. So Kevin will be tested in putting up with Josh for 2 hours. Kevin, how you doing today?
Josh, I'm doing good. I was flattered when you asked me to come on, and yes, my magical jerseys are back up on the wall for those who missed out on the debacle yesterday. I may or may not have helped the Phillies walk off yesterday, or 2 days ago, sorry.
Well, the thing is, we haven't determined yet, was it the extra inning walk-off, or was it the Alvarado inning? Like, did he walk a guy as you took a jersey down, and then he get a strikeout as you moved a jersey? Like, we don't know about that fully yet.
Yeah, we don't know exactly, but all I know is you yelled at me for having the jerseys down. When I took them down, the game got tied. Listen, when I got off, I said the jerseys were going to go back up and the Phillies were going to pull it out. Lo and behold, Gene Segura walks it off. So I'm not saying the jerseys are magical. We don't know what connection there is yet, but they are in place, and they're not moving. They're not moving.
They're not moving. All right. Well, there you go. Kevin McCormick live on the Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter stream. We got a lot to get to, Kevin. Obviously, despite the fact that the Eagles can't seem to get out of the headlines, they continue to linger in the headlines. Phillies opening day win. Also, we got Sixers back in action. 4-2 road trip. You know, Kevin, I was saying yesterday on game night, I think Philly fans forget that the glass is half full here. Listen, removing the Flyers from the conversation because they're an absolute dumpster fire right now. The other three teams are actually entertaining and putting something interesting out there to talk about. And I think the problem is that you go 4-2 on the road trip, and there's a handful of fans who are like, Ben Simmons played like garbage. You have another side of the coin where it is, hey, the Phillies won opening day, but Aaron Nola gave up 2 runs. And it's like, but they won. So what are we complaining about here?
Yeah, I agree. That's just Philly sports fandom, man. This is why we can't have nice things, just because someone's always going to find something to scream and yell about, whether it's Ben Simmons' lackluster performance post All-Star, even though, like you said, they did more than survive this road trip. If you would have told somebody at the beginning of the year that they would have had a road trip like this without Joel Embiid, people would have been chalking it up to 0-6. Granted, some injuries at the front of the trip helped them out a little bit, not having to deal with Steph Curry, not having to deal with LeBron and AD, but the team still willed themselves together. And like you said, same thing with the Phillies. They willed in that victory after the Braves tied it late. So definitely a lot to be excited about.
And, of course, text board is open. 609-403-0973 is the text board. And you can comment as you watch us live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at 973 ESPN. Kevin, I did want to hit on the Sixers first because you do write about the Sixers for 973 ESPN.com. We'll get more into the Eagles a little bit later in the hour. But, you know, I mentioned the fact that we went 4-2 on this road trip. To me, I think that there is a huge thing to point to, the fact that, yes, they went 4-2 without Embiid. I understand part of it was against the Cavs and the Lakers, who are undermanned teams for the most part right now. But still, last year they only won 12 road games the entire year. I think there is a credit that needs to be given to this team and their grown maturity, a credit given to Doc Rivers, the head coach, a credit given to Daryl Morey for building a roster that actually makes sense. All right. I feel like there's so much more to be appreciative where they are right now than hate on. I'm not saying there's not negatives here. I'm not saying that we can't criticize Ben Simmons or any of that, but I'm just saying that let's balance. Let's have a balance.
When you look at it, there's always going to be something to nitpick about, just because no team is perfect. Every team is going to have its flaws, whether it's, a team like the 73-9 Warriors to the 10-win Sixers. No, there's never been a perfect team in the NBA. But the fact that the Sixers have been able to just continually pull out wins this season has been remarkable. I feel like one common theme we've seen this season is, this is a game the Sixers don't win in previous years. I feel like that's something people have said 5 to 6 times this year, which is great. And like you said, it speaks volumes to the addition of Doc Rivers in that locker room, the great coaching staff he brought in behind him, Joel and Ben maturing another year, bringing in vets like Danny Green and Dwight Howard, who just aren't going to let a young team slack off. So the fight they've shown, the fact that there's been multiple wins this season where they've just kept themselves alive and been able to pull it out in the end, I think it speaks volumes to just how good they are defensively. When they lock in, they can really get stops on anyone. So even though the offense has sputtered at times, it's been nice to see that they've still been able to pull out wins like that. And it's, having just that collective unit, the culture change this season has without a doubt been the greatest impact when you're looking at last year to this season.
You mentioned the culture change. Let's dig deep a little bit deeper into that. I think people don't always appreciate. People always say stuff like, "Oh, the coach, right? The coach does this." To me, the coach is more about how he helps the team better themselves, right? In professional basketball, it's the coach's job to elevate the talent that's there. In college, it's the coach's job to put the players in a position to be successful. And I think people forget that because the coach gets so much attention in college versus the NBA. Today we get the Final Four going on. There's no Gonzaga without Mark Few. Well, guess what? The Bulls got to the conference finals with Doug Collins, but Phil Jackson had to elevate Jordan and Pippen to that next level. I think that, to me, is where Doc comes in. I think Doc is elevating these guys on this team, especially Tobias Harris. I had Tom Moore on yesterday. He told a great story about how Doc Rivers went to Tobias Harris and said, "Hey, which hand do you like to go with?" "Oh, I don't mind either hand." And he said, he said baloney, but he said, BS instead, to Tobias. And he goes, "You like to go left." And he's like, "Why don't you go left more?" And Tobias' answers was, "Well, they didn't call plays for me to go left." And Doc's like, "Well, we're going to change that." Like, those are small things that people don't think about that are a big part of coaching at the professional level, is finding what the players do well and putting them in those situations so they can elevate their game to make the team better.
And not only does Doc Rivers, his knowledge of the game and how long he's been around, kind of elevate this roster, I feel like part of it is too just his reputation. I feel like when you bring in a guy like Doc Rivers, even though this team is still primarily young, they all know Doc Rivers. Most of them probably watched him growing up. They understand he's a Hall of Fame caliber coach, and no knock to Brett Brown, but when he got here, he was known as the guy who was the head coach through all the tanking, and he hadn't really done anything. So I think when you bring in a coach like Doc Rivers, who commands the kind of respect because of the success he's had in the past, let alone what he brings scheme-wise and being able to have those working relationships with a guy like Tobias Harris, who's been phenomenal this year, just helps elevate these guys as a whole.
He's Kevin McCormick. I'm Josh Hennig here on Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, Tech Sport is open at 609-403-0973. We are also live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can watch the show with Kevin's magical 3 Phillies jerseys behind him. I'm over here in the Matt Black Kia studios here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Now, you mentioned Tobias Harris. You saw the article I wrote for the website. You know how my position has been. I have been dead set on Tobias Harris not getting enough credit. And I think he might be slowly getting more credit, but I just feel like people don't understand what this guy has meant to this team, because without Embiid, he's basically been the leading scorer most of this road trip outside of the last game where Shake Milton went insane, basically. Tobias has been a really, really great player for this team, and I don't think we give him enough credit because I think there's still a contingent of people out there who all they want to talk about is he's overpaid, he didn't deserve the money, and all that kind of garbage.
Yeah, he's been phenomenal. This is something we kind of talked about before. I feel like just part of the reason why he was getting overlooked in a sense is just because the incredible season that Joel Embiid was having. When you were watching the Sixers, you were just in awe at the things that Joel Embiid was doing. But without a doubt, Tobias Harris has not gotten enough credit. And I said when Joel Embiid went down, this is the chance for Tobias Harris to really go on that revenge tour and just show how big of a piece he's been this season, how crucial he's been to the winning that they've done. Although Joel Embiid was playing at an MVP level all season, Tobias Harris was right behind him in the box score almost every night. He was that reliable right-hand man. They were closing games together. He was hitting big shots in the clutch, whether it's against the Lakers or his overtime performance against Utah. So I agree. I think just getting him back to his natural position, getting him back with Doc Rivers has been incredible. And early on in this road trip, he showed that he can be a guy and he wants this. So, there's that famous moment against New York where he hit that post fade in the lane and he turns to the crowd and he's screaming, "I'm an all-star." I mean, this is a guy, he's motivated. He's been a man possessed for long stretches of this season. And it's been big because they're going to need him come postseason.
When you mentioned they're going to need him come postseason, I think that's the part where people, I think, start cutting on him. Oh, well, he's never done in the postseason. Well, he's really only been in a couple of postseasons, so it's not like we can really judge him overtly. And by the way, he was the only guy who seemed like he was playing in the bubble last year.
Yeah, and it's hard to gauge that first postseason run just because of how much roster turnover went through that season. He went from being an all-star level, like being the guy with the Clippers, to realistically kind of being the fourth option on the Sixers team in a sense, whether you want to gauge who was more involved in that offense between him and Redick. And last year, the shot wasn't falling. And I feel like it's still hard to gauge last year too, just because having no Ben Simmons and they were rolling with the new starting lineup. Sometimes Al Horford was in, sometimes he was out. It's tough to really gauge so far. And I think this is really the time for him to turn it on just because he has another full season here under his belt. He's back with a coach who understands his game. This offense is really flowing. So hopefully this is the year where they really start to put it together.
And by the way, the Sixers are 18-3 when he gets at least 20 points and 6 rebounds in a game. I put it on Twitter. People got mad at me. I was like, hey, this guy is responsible for basically half the team's wins. People are like, well, what are you saying? Joel Embiid didn't do anything? And I'm like, no, but you guys don't want to give Tobias Harris any credit because Tobias Harris doesn't, fit somebody's narrative, or he's not endeared as much as Embiid is, which I think is always hilarious that the people who love Embiid for some reason hate the other two guys. And then if you like the other two guys, you don't like Embiid. Like, why can't you like all three? Like, what is so bad about any one of them that you can't like all three? Like, all three of them are really good at certain things. Nobody's perfect. You need all three to win a championship if you're going to win a championship. This idea that, like, I love Embiid and I hate Simmons, or I love Simmons and I hate Embiid, it's just so silly to me.
And people just can't understand that you can have multiple stars who impact the game in different ways. Like,
Kevin, you need multiple stars.
Exactly. Yeah, nobody has ever done it alone outside of Dirk in 2010 when he beat Miami. That's about the only time you can look in NBA history where a superstar really just kind of willed a team to a title on his own.
Well, he had JJ Barea.
Yeah, he had JJ Barea, Tyson Chandler, Sean Marion, Jason Kidd. Yeah,
old Jason Kidd too. Jason Kidd couldn't even jump anymore.
And it's just like, you look at all these teams back in the day. I mean, Bird had Michael Parrish, Magic had Kareem. Like, you need multiple guys because you need to fill in multiple holes to win a title, to be that just unstoppable team. You got Joel, who's doing these otherworldly things on offense, manning things around the rim. Why can't you have a guy in Tobias Harris who's just a nice right-hand man who gets you a quiet 20 every night? You got Ben Simmons, who's a phenomenal facilitator and can defend the opposing team's best player regardless of position. I agree with you. I don't understand why you can't just like this team as a whole. They're so fun to watch when they're fully healthy. All these guys are playing the best basketball of their career, and they're all impacting winning on a nightly basis every day. So I don't understand why you need to pinpoint one guy every night as like the guy that's doing everything.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, teams win championships, not individuals.
Exactly.
The reason why it's called a team sport. All right, there's a reason why it's a group of men come together and win a championship, or in whatever sport it is, men or women, doesn't matter. The point is that it's a group of people who come together to win together. Now, in basketball, I understand that LeBron can go to any team on the planet and make them a contender, but there's very few LeBrons, and there's a ton of Tobias Harris's. Okay, let's be realistic. There's way easier to find a Tobias Harris and maybe a Ben Simmons than it is to find a LeBron. So I understand there are a handful of players who do make a huge difference. But speaking of Ben, we got to get into Ben a little bit at least, because he has been playing really weird lately. I don't understand. I know Paul Hudrick was saying yesterday on the Sports Bash that he thinks that Ben is kind of in his own head and he's just not making good decisions. But the thing is, isn't this who Ben has always been? Ben has always been a guy who has deferred. He's always been a guy who has not been very assertive. And you know what? He hasn't scored over 20 points since March 23rd. And I think that part of it has to do with the fact that, he thinks that he doesn't have to score for this team to win. And I think that that's more of a mentality than it is this idea that Ben can't shoot.
He even said it not too long ago that he's still working on the mental of his game of getting out of that pass first mentality and really just embracing that just attacking aggressive nature. And if you look at this road trip, I really think the main thing with me has been, it feels like he's had a really tough time of flipping that switch of when to be the facilitator and get everyone involved and when to just realize that, hey, I need to take over this game because this offense is sputtering and I need to go get a bucket. If you look early on in this road trip and when Embiid went down, the supporting cast was playing really well, guys. They were finding points from everywhere. And with all the extra shots and touches to go around from Embiid, Ben was doing a good job setting the table and getting everyone involved, which is what you needed at that time. Because when you have a guy like Joel Embiid who's getting you 30 and 15 every night, when he goes out, you can't just look at one guy like a Ben Simmons or a Tobias Harris and be like, oh, you have to step up and replace that. You can't do that. It takes a village. So the fact that he was able to set the table for everyone, get everyone involved was nice. And when the bench was scoring, it was great. But when they sputtered out, you saw it hard and it crashed and they've had their struggles. But the big thing for me was after Denver, he talked about it, having to get himself back in order and get this team back on track. And although the shots weren't falling against Cleveland, he maintained his aggressiveness from beginning to end. He was trying to get himself going in transition. He was trying to get that little baby hook that he's been getting going. So the fact that he had that awareness to say it and then back it up in his play, even though the shots didn't go to fall, I think still was a major positive from the experience. But I agree. His play has been down, but I think once Embiid's back and this lineup is back to the regular way it's been on a nightly basis, he's going to go back to looking like the Ben Simmons that we were talking about, this new version of Ben Simmons.
Now, people would also say, though, Kevin, just to play a little devil's advocate, well, Ben, they need him to be assertive because when they lost by 10 to the Clippers and 9 to the Nuggets, maybe if Ben scores more than 11 and 15 points, they could have had a chance to win the game. To which my answer is, if Ben's out there trying to score, though, I don't know if he's doing some of the other things. Now, in both those games, he had low assist totals too. So it's hard to gauge sometimes with him exactly what is going on in that head of his, because as you said, he goes out there and tries to be aggressive, but it might not always work out. You can go and take 11 shots like you did in Cleveland, but you only might hit 2 of them. You can go 7-11 for one night from the free throw line. Then another night, what was it, 8 for 15 or 8 for 14 from the line. So it's hard to gauge with him exactly what's going on in his head in certain situations, but I understand the criticism, because the criticism is if Ben does more, maybe they win certain games. But as you just said, the supporting cast has stepped up so much, it's hard to tell what Ben Simmons would have done to really make the situation better.
And what's tricky is with the guy who's so pass first like Ben Simmons, when the guys around him aren't hitting shots, I feel like it weighs down on his performance as well. Because like you said, at the end of the game, you see that he only took 7 shots and he only had 2 assists. Well, if guys aren't hitting shots, it's hard for him to get assists no matter how clean of looks he's getting. But I think he's going to get out of it. Even if you look at that Cleveland game, yeah, he missed 9 shots, but there was a lot that just rolled out that just weren't rolling his way. He just can't seem to find the touch at the rim. And if you look back to early on in the season, before he really went on that monster tear towards the All-Star break, he was kind of going through that same stint where his layups just weren't hitting and everything was just rolling out for him. So once he just gets back to finding that nice touch around the rim, I feel like the points are going to go back to where it was.
He's Kevin McCormick. I'm Josh Hennig here on Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN. Our Sixers conversation being brought to you by Trifecta Therapeutics in Glassboro, South Jersey's premier sports and rehabilitation physical therapy center. Treating the pros and the Joes. Visit them online at trifectatherapeutics.com. We'll get into the Eagles a little bit later in the show as well, and touch on the Phillies as well, as they are finally back in action. I think the dumbest thing in the world is they play a game and take a day off. I mean, that's just, I don't get it. It's not collectively bargained. It's not something that is supposed, it's just, It's how the schedule plays out every single year, because apparently TV contracts and other things affect the world more so than common sense. But, there are things out there. Yeah, Kevin, I don't understand really quick before we hit the break. Phillies, they get this win, big win, extra innings, and then it's like, hey, I need a day off.
It's baseball being baseball. When are they ever known for doing the right thing? And exactly, you start off that season on such a high note, and you got all these people who are like, oh, like you have the high of opening day, and like this is a chance where you can really draw in some fans. Oh, you give everybody a day off the next day, and then the 24-hour news cycle that we live in, everyone completely forgets about it. So you just go back to just drawing in your typical casual fans. I agree. It makes no sense. Why not make it a huge, big spectacle? Like it's opening day of baseball. The fact that you have all these opening day games, you have some great finishes and great performances, and then you just follow it up with a day off. It makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, and selfishly, I got to sit half my baseball fantasy roster next day because half of baseball decided to take it off on Good Friday. I don't know what that's about. And by the way, the Phillies game today is at 4:00. So that means that halfway through the Phillies game, the NCAA tournament Final Four is going to be on. So if you have maybe some money on the game, where you have Gonzaga winning your national championship and you could still win your bracket pool, maybe you're not watching the Phillies halfway through the game because you got to go watch the tournament. So it's just, as you just said, baseball sometimes just can't get stuff right.
Never. It seems like they never get it right. And then they wonder why they can't draw in new fans.
There's a lot of reasons. Let's get into that on the other side.
Okay.
I have a very expansive theory about what baseball's problem is. And I'm not saying I'm right, but it's my personal theory and perspective. All right. So that's what you got to look forward to on the other side. Kevin can gauge that theory. He's Kevin McCormick here at KevinMC973. Check out all of his work over at 973ESPN.com. I'm Josh Hennig at Josh Hennig on Twitter, here on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. A great new feature on the app now, not just because it's free. You can pick what alerts you want on the app now. So if you want Phillies and Sixers alerts only, you can just click on Phillies and Sixers and you will only get those alerts. So you don't have to get all the alerts. You can customize your alerts now on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. So if you just want all of Kevin McCormick's Sixers coverage, you can just click on the Sixers button and you can get no updates on the Flyers because you're that mad about the Flyers. So you can do that with the free 97.3 ESPN mobile app, thanks to First Bank of Seattle City.
Westwood One is your exclusive home for the 2021 NCAA tournament. It's only fitting that a season unlike any other comes to a conclusion in the most unique circumstances. From 68 teams down to one, all in the same state. Every basket, buzzer beater, and bracket buster until a champion is crowned. Who will take home the title? Tune in to find out. All the excitement of March Madness right here.
It's the Final Four later today on 97.3 ESPN. Coverage begins at 4:30.
There's far too much fun to fit into one day, so the Atlantic County Utilities Authority is celebrating Earth Month with things to do, learn, and enjoy every day in April. And it's all free. Enjoy family-friendly performances, animal shows, workshops, crafts, kids' story time, and even yoga. ACUA's Earth Month offers something for everyone. Learn about beekeeping, native plants, composting, renewable energy, and much more. Get the schedule and sign up for updates at acua.com/Earth Month.
Hey, my name is James, and a little thing I love about Chick-fil-A's Grilled Spicy Deluxe is the first bite, you get a little kick of spice, and then that cilantro and lime sauce that kind of balances things out. Just delicious.
Hey, I'm Amber. A little thing I love about the Chick-fil-A new Grilled Spicy Deluxe is how well all of the ingredients complement each other. It's so good. I like bob my head side to side, dancing while I eat.
Chick-fil-A's Grilled Spicy Deluxe Sandwich, available for a limited time only. Real guests paid for their testimonials.
This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here on Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN. I'm live at the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. As you see on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, I am joined by Kevin McCormick here on the stream here on 97.3 ESPN. We'll get to some of your thoughts here at 609-403-0973. And we got comments on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Before we get to my, as Kevin calls it, my crazy baseball theory, I got a couple comments jumping in here. Ralph watching over here on YouTube. I want to get to Ralph's comment here before we get to the text board. I like to get to the messages in the order they came in. I'm all about chronological order here. So Ralph says, bro, please stop making excuses for Ben Simmons. How does Zion Williamson have more touch than Ben Simmons around the rim in his second year? Well, a couple reasons, and then I'll let Kevin respond as well. First of all, Zion doesn't have touch. He just dunks all the time, all right? Zion's go-to move is dunking. He doesn't have real touch, all right? There's guys who have touch around the rim. I wouldn't say Zion has touch. He's a powerhouse, all right? What Zion does is he looks to score more than Ben Simmons does. I understand they're trying to do that point Zion thing down in New Orleans, which obviously isn't working out because Stan Van Gundy is obviously the most overrated retread coach in the league right now. So, you have a situation where the point Zion is not working because Zion can't get back on defense. All right. Zion's so busy being Zion and making highlights that the team can't play defense.
So, like you said, Zion, he doesn't have touch. His go-to move is he is just a super athlete who is just going to bulldoze whoever's in his way and punish the rim. And while we're talking about the Zion Ben Simmons thing, you remember last year when Zion made his debut and he hit those 4 threes and he got the instant comparisons to Ben Simmons of, Zion shooting threes, Ben Simmons don't. Zion has 8 made threes this year and he attempts like 0.5 threes per game for his career. So why is it that only with Ben Simmons, it became this just infuriating debate about him not shooting the ball, but yet we can glorify Zion as he just is this locomotive in transition, punishing everybody under the rim, and no one talks about the fact that he doesn't step out and shoot threes.
Well, the other thing with Zion is what I find interesting is that people love Zion because he gets a bright smile. He's gregarious. He's a nice guy. He's a good kid. And that's all great. But there is no way this guy is ever going to live up to the expectations. That team has a number 1 overall pick and 2 second overall picks on that team, and they are under 500. So how great really is Zion?
I think he's great. I think it's too soon to have the jury out on him. He's only 20 years. The kid hasn't even played 82 games. Oh, I just called him a kid. I feel so old. He hasn't even played 82 games yet.
Welcome to my world, McCormick.
Except I'm only like 4 years older than him, so I shouldn't even be calling him a kid. We're in that age group. We could really be friends if we wanted to. But I agree. He seems like a great guy. I feel like it is way too soon to put.
Just comment right there. You can be friends because you're in the same age group. But come on.
But it's too soon to put the jury out on them. This is really their first kind of full year together. Like you said, brand new head coach, even though you just completely slandered Stan Van Gundy. I did not see that coming. Not to mention,
I am anti Stan Van Gundy. I am a Van Gundy hater. I think he's an excellent analyst on television. I think he's an incredible guy on a broadcast or on a pre and post game. But as a coach, he's completely overrated. He had one great run with the Orlando Magic. And as soon as his ego got in the way, it all fell apart. There's a reason why Pat Riley ran him out of Miami. There's a reason why he got run out of Detroit. Remember, he was the GM too.
Yeah, they gave him all the power in Detroit, and that was just a dumpster fire.
Stan Van Gundy is the poster child for being a quote-unquote basketball guy, but not knowing how to take all that basketball knowledge and translate it into wins on the court, because you're supposed to be this defensive-minded guy, and you got 3 elite talents, and they can't play defense.
Not to mention Zion was kind of known for his defense at Duke, and the fact that it's
how did Coach K get Zion to play defense, and Alvin Gentry got Zion to play defense, but Stan Van Gundy can't get Zion to play defense?
Especially considering when you could potentially put Zion in that same type of freak athlete nature that Dwight was in Orlando. Granted, Dwight was a little bigger, but yeah, it doesn't make sense. And they're in a similar situation of what the Sixers were in last year. Like I just said, Zion doesn't really shoot the ball. His game is, we've just said, he's just going to bulldoze somebody and he's going to dunk the ball. And their key move in the offseason was not only trading for Steven Adams, who's just going to sit in his way, but they extended him to like a 3-year deal. So it's like, what are you doing there? It's just another situation of you're just not maximizing the talent of this just generational guy that you have in your hand. Guys like Zion don't roll around all the time. Whether he meets the expectations or not, it's going to be tough just because there's been so much hype around him since he was like 15 years old. But the fact that they're already mishandling the pieces they're putting around him is a little concerning.
Now, before we get to what you just said, Ralph also followed up and says Zion has an okay shot, which also Ben Simmons is an okay shot too. You know, when Ben ever sets and shoots, he makes it.
Ben Simmons is a good jump shooter. I can confirm I've watched the man endlessly warm up and shoot threes. Yeah, I've seen with my eyes. It's not that he can't shoot, it's that he won't shoot. Ben Simmons is like secretly one of the best league average 3-point shooters. We just haven't seen him shoot the ball yet. I mean, you look at the end of that Milwaukee game, he called that thing at the buzzer. It was clean. The form, it went right in. There was not a doubt in my mind that shot wasn't going in.
Dude, that was the shot that so you know me, I try to stay off of Twitter during games. That was the moment I ran the Twitter to see people.
Oh, yes.
Just for entertainment value. Because I knew when he hit that shot, people were going to lose their minds.
And what's great is he's slowly approaching having a league average percentage. So if he only attempts like 3 or 4 more and is able to make half of them, Ben Simmons might actually finish the season as a league average 3-point shooter. But yet people aren't going to talk about his development as a player because it's just
it's a mental block.
Yeah, and it's easy to have the narrative of he doesn't work hard, he's a prima donna, this, that, and the third. Everything we've heard in the past week and a half as he goes through a cold spell.
Yeah, and
Ben can take over a game. We saw that Utah Jazz game when he had 42.
42 points, right?
You go back to last year on MLK Day against Brooklyn when he had like 34, 16, 5, 2, and 4. It's just, he can take over a game. I don't understand. It's almost like hating Ben Simmons became a personality trait when he got here. And it's like what you said at the top of the show. If you like Joel Embiid for some reason, you can't like Ben Simmons. And if you like Ben Simmons, you can't like the other. I don't get it. There doesn't have to be a divide. They play for the same team. If they win the title, they're both going to hoist the trophy. It's not one of those, if Ben has a better game, he gets the trophy. Like, they all get the accolades. It's like you said, it's a team sport. It doesn't make sense to me.
Kevin, you mentioned a great point about the people have that perception of him. It's because he was the number 1 overall pick, because people have these expectations that they place on the things. It's like, I always use the movie analogy. Okay. So if you make a trailer too exciting, and then you go to the movie and it's not as good, you're disappointed. The movie can still be very good, right? The movie can still, but if your expectations are sky high, as I put my hand above where the camera can go, instead of putting the expectations maybe at a head level, at the eyeball level, then you have a situation where at least you go to the movie and you're like, that was even better than I hoped for, right? Like, that was, you know who was excellent at doing that? Christopher Nolan. When Christopher Nolan made the Dark Knight movies, he said, I'm not going to make the trailer too much. I'm going to make it just enough to get you in the door, and then I'm going to blow your face off with how amazing these movies are. The problem is that people take those expectations that you're due with movies to sports. You go with the number 1 overall pick, automatically has to be a legend, right? He automatically has to be a superstar, right? He has to be Michael Jordan, even though Michael Jordan was 3rd overall. He has to be Giannis. Giannis is what, 14, 15, right? There's all these guys, Donovan Mitchell. These dudes are not always number 1 overall picks. But people think if you have the number 1 overall pick, he has to be a superstar. And I think that's the problem. The expectations are one thing, but then the reality is something else. People are always going to hold that against Ben Simmons. Just like people were always, there are people in Philadelphia who still to this day in 2021 hate Markelle Fultz because they say he made up the shoulder injury and it was all fake and he just wanted to get out of town. He was too soft to play in Philadelphia when, except for just admitting he actually did have a shoulder problem.
Except here's the thing with Ben Simmons. First off, with the whole movie trailer reference, it's almost like with Ben Simmons, people see the trailer and then they expect the movie to be completely something different. When you look at the way people talk about Ben Simmons, they're like, oh, I want him to take over a game. Like right there, oh, Zion can take over a game. Why isn't Ben like LeBron? Why isn't Ben like Giannis? That isn't the type of player Ben is. When you look at Ben and the way he plays, I've said for years now, although Ben got the quote-unquote next LeBron tag thrown on him early on, I feel like he's always been more Magic Johnson than LeBron James. He's a guy who wants to get everyone involved. He wants to push the floor. He prides himself on making the players around him better. And the fact that he's not what these people are begging him to be bothers them so much. So when you look at Ben Simmons, you have to gauge him for what he is as a player. And if you're just going to continue to put on these ridiculous expectations of a player that he isn't, you're always going to be disappointed. And I don't get why people are disappointed with the number 1 pick overall thing. He's a multiple-time All-Star, Rookie of the Year. He could be the Defensive Player of the Year this year. He was an All-NBA guy last year. If you went on Sixers Twitter after a loss and the way people talked about Ben Simmons, actually, if you didn't watch the Sixers at all and only gauged how people talked about Ben Simmons on social media, you think Ben Simmons was like an Anthony Bennett, Andrew Wiggins type of number 1 overall pick and not actually a guy who, yeah, he hasn't done anything crazy, but he has a lot of accolades that a guy his age don't typically have. I don't get it.
But it gets back to what you said. People started saying he was the next LeBron, and I think that was the problem. The expectations were he's going to be like LeBron, and he's nothing like LeBron.
Exactly.
Sure, he has certain physical abilities that are kind of similar to LeBron. I mean, I think physically he's more like Giannis than he is LeBron, honestly, because of his length and his size. And actually, the guy that this is where I think the Sixers kind of messed him up. All right, because remember Brett Brown said, and this is where I will blame Brett Brown. I'm not a Brett Brown hater, but I call a spade a spade. When he said that he wanted Ben Simmons to be a point guard, I think that was the first problem. They should have never made him a point guard. They should have made him a point forward. For those who, may not be old enough who are out there watching and listening to remember, when Grant Hill came to the NBA, he couldn't shoot. Jason Kidd was called Asen Kidd because they said he had no jump shot. Those guys were not pure point guards when they came to the league. They told those guys, you're going to be point forwards. You're going to help operate the offense, but we're going to put another guy on the court next to you to operate with you until you improve your game. Well, guess what? Both of them became Hall of Fame level players. And I think if they would have done it to Ben Simmons, instead of saying, Ben, you're going to be the point guard, and taking him maybe out of that attacking element, I think it totally changed the trajectory of his career. And maybe that's what messed his mindset up.
I could agree to a little bit of that. Brett even said towards the end of his tenure here that part of the reason why Ben Simmons became the point guard was because he was really the only one on the roster who could dribble the ball and facilitate. But I completely agree. I talked to Paul Hudrick a little while back, and he always brought up the Scottie Pippen comparison, and I think there's some truth to there too. But my thing with Ben is if you can turn him into this rich man's version of Draymond Green, that is, I feel like, the most ideal scenario of what he could become, this Swiss Army knife, quote-unquote, point forward guy who's going to fill in everywhere. He's just going to defend hard and be that glue guy that's going to help put a good team over the top to be a great team.
He's Kevin McCormick. I'm Josh Hennig here on Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN. I promise I get you a couple texts here at 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Dan NEHT chimes in and says, we will see with Ben. He hasn't had a good playoff yet. This is only his third playoff run, and I'm optimistic. With that said, if he struggles, the Sixers have real concerns about his future. What are your thoughts on that, Kevin?
I think this is a chance for him to have a little bit better of a playoff performance, just because, like we were talking about, he should have been best embraced as a point forward type of guy. And we've seen that this year. Doc Rivers has done a much better job embracing him as a screener. So I think the fact that he's been able to roll hard in the pick and roll, and it's actually something I said not too long ago about what he thinks of that growth of his game. And Doc talked a little bit about he likes the idea of putting Ben in the short roll because it puts him in a position to not only have that nice, kind of beeline to the rim, but when teams have to react to that, it also puts him in a great position to facilitate as well when defenses are scrambling, and he's the way he's able to find guys. So it's tough to say if this is the make or break playoff performance with him, just because of it's Doc Rivers' first year. They had that slow start because of COVID where they couldn't really come together. This team, although we're, almost 70% of the way through the season, I think the Sixers have only practiced 4 times this regular season. So they're pretty much doing everything on the fly and still succeeding the way they are. So I think it's way too soon to still press that panic button of real concern about the big picture future until Doc Rivers really gets a chance to kind of dig his roots into this team. They get to practice regularly and he gets to really grow. He even said not too long ago, he hasn't even gotten to use his full playbook with this group yet, just because of the sheer fact of they don't really have the time to work on it just because of playing every other day, not getting to practice. They spend all this time traveling and they can't get together too much because of protocol and such. So I think he has had his struggles, but I think this year we could see a growth of Ben Simmons in the playoffs offensively.
Now, I want to get back on one thing you said earlier before we hit the break. You mentioned about the Pelicans and their situation. I thought the JJ Redick podcast comments were interesting. I think you and I talked about this the other day. Mm-hmm. To me, listen, David Griffin has a very good reputation from his time in Cleveland. All right. I kind of have to wonder, did David Griffin and the Pelicans really lie to JJ Redick as he implies or as he's trying to say, or did maybe JJ Redick misunderstand what was being said? Because I go back to what happened with Griffin when he left the Cavs. Remember the reason why he was no longer the GM? He was no longer the GM because him and the owner had a falling out, right? Him and Dan Gilbert had a falling out. I got to wonder, is that Cavs situation maybe destined for failure? Because people forget, the owner of the Pelicans is the owner of the Saints. It's a football person. So there's a possibility that there might be a disconnect there too. So it might not be Griffin he's a liar. Or it might just be that David Griffin just can't connect with certain people and he's just not an individual maybe.
I think part of it is that JJ Redick just might have some sour grapes. I don't know. Just because, listen, a few weeks back when the trade rumors really started to swirl this season, one rumor that came out was JJ Redick wanted out of New Orleans and he wanted to go to a Northeastern team to be closer to his family. So whether it was Boston, the Brooklyn Nets, or to come back to Philly. And I think part of the fact that maybe when they had that initial conversation and he put that request into Griffin, maybe he promised him that would happen, but obviously it didn't happen. But at the end of the day, these organizations are a business. They have to do what's best for them. And I feel like this is the gray area of the player empowerment movement that we have in the NBA, that a player is now coming out and just bashing a front office because he gave them one wish. But at the end of the day, they probably did what was best for their organization in terms of getting a return for their asset because they could get more from a Dallas Mavericks team than they could from a Brooklyn Nets or a Boston Celtics or the Sixers.
And it's a bunch of expiring contracts, basically, is what they got in return for him. So it's going to help them theoretically.
Exactly. In the long run.
Agency.
Yeah, these teams have to do what's best for them. And if JJ Redick really wanted to go to these other teams, one, he could have stayed in Philly if he wanted to. He even said himself when he left, he did what's best for him economically. Correct. Which meant was he went to New Orleans because they paid him the most money. So
the Sixers offered him a very market-friendly contract, but he accepted the Pelicans overpaying him.
Josh, when he first came here, they gave him a 1-year, $23 million deal. You are never seeing a contract like that again if you're JJ Redick. And the fact that they gave you that contract in the beginning as kind of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge thing of, we want you here long term, but we're not going to be able to pay you this money now. So we will give you all of this while we have the space. And in terms of you do us a favor on the back end, but obviously he did not. And now he has these sour grapes because he's stuck in New Orleans and now he's going to Texas. And let alone, it's not like they sent him to like the Detroit Pistons. Oh, sorry, JJ Redick. You have to go play with Luka Doncic for the rest of the season, who's probably going to feed you some of the best looks you've had this year, and you're going to be wide open and be able to rejuvenate yourself and maybe get another contract at the end of the year because of Luka. So sorry you have to spend 20 games with, one of the next bright young faces of the league.
Yeah, he's had a pretty nice career, right? He's played with Chris Paul. He's got to play with Luka. He played with Joel Embiid. He played with Zion. He's played with some pretty good play. He played with Dwight down in Orlando. Like JJ's had a nice career. Like it's not like he's played with I don't know.
He's made the playoffs every year of his career except one. Sorry, dude. You've had such a struggle on your road to the NBA.
He's Kevin McCormick. I'm Josh Hennig here on Sports Batch Saturday on 97.3 ESPN. Keep the messages coming. 609-403-0973 is the text where we are also live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter where you can watch the shows. We are live here. Kevin's over at his house with the 3 Phillies jerseys. I'm here in the Matt Blatt Kia Studios here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Don't forget the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City for your Phillies, Eagles, Sixers, and Flyers coverage right there on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app.
It's Sixers basketball tomorrow on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McGinnis, calling all the exciting play-by-play action.
Turning, hanging, firing, it's good! Tobias Harris, he can't be stopped at OT!
The Sixers host the Memphis Grizzlies tomorrow night.
Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Philadelphia 76ers basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN.
Get the credit you deserve during Matt Blatt Kia's Madness in March sales event with 0 down and 0% APR financing for 75 months. Get to Matt Blatt Kia in Toms River and Egg Harbor Township because at Matt Blatt Kia, we want to get you approved today. And you can't make a mistake with our 4-day love it or leave it return policy. Plus, we want your trade, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. So get out of that old car you hate. Come in today or visit us online and get the credit you deserve. Put 0 down and get 0% APR financing available for up to 75 months on every new 2021 Kia Sportage or take $2,500 off MSRP because
it's gotta be a Matt Blatt Kia.
Offers with approved Tier 1 or 2 credit through Kia Motors Finance. Not all will qualify. 0% based on $1,333 per 1,000 borrowed. All Kia Motors factory rebates to dealer. Go to mattblattkianj.com for complete details. Expires 4/5/2021. Matt Blatt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, and now on Route 37 in Toms River.
There's far too much fun to fit into one day, so the Atlantic County Utilities Authority is celebrating Earth Month with things to do, learn, and enjoy every day in April. And it's all free. Enjoy family-friendly performances, animal shows, workshops, crafts, kids' story time, and even yoga. ACUA's Earth Month offers something for everyone. Learn about beekeeping, native plants, composting, renewable energy, and much more. Get the schedule and sign up for updates at acua.com/Earth Month.
This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN Sports Bash Saturday, joined by special guest co-host for the show today, Kevin McCormick at KevinMC973 over there on Twitter. Check out all of his work over at 973ESPN.com. So, Kevin, I promised you I'd get you my crazy baseball theory here. I figured we'd get it to you before we get out of here for this hour, before we forget about it. So, my baseball theory is this. I think baseball has done an incredibly poor job at marketing themselves. I remember when I was younger, and I'm going back about 20, 21 years here. So when I was younger, you would go to a Phillies game, and as you're crossing over the bridge from New Jersey to PA, or if you were in Philly, you're driving down the street, right? You're going down Broad Street or wherever you are. You know, you used to see billboards, Jimmy Rollins on every commercial, Chase Utley on every commercial, right? You turn on the television, you knew every player on the team. Baseball doesn't market the players anymore. They market, come to the ballpark, the experience. Every commercial of baseball is, I see kids playing on a side street. I see families at a ballpark. I see random player who I can't really see who the jersey is or their face. Nobody knows who plays baseball anymore. The best players on planet Earth are Mike Trout and Fernando Tatis, and barely anybody knows them because baseball doesn't really market them. You know how people know about Fernando Tatis? Because of that what is that? The power, the Gatorade thing.
Powerade, yeah.
The Bolt 24, the Bolt 24 commercial. People know him from that commercial. That they know him from baseball. People know about Mike Trout in this area because he's from Millville, right? And he's a local kid. People don't know who the baseball players are anymore. The stars are not marketed in baseball like they are in basketball and football. That's baseball's problem. People are going and looking at baseball like, why should I watch your sport? Why should I care? And baseball says, because we're baseball.
I 100% completely agree that baseball just does an absolute terrible job of marketing its stars. Mike Trout is viewed as a guy who's going to go down as like one of the best to ever play the sport. And I think if he walked down the street in about any major town, no one's really going to know who he is just because baseball doesn't know justice in marketing him. And part of it, I think it's just baseball's such an old school game and they really just refuse to go from their ways. Like the whole debate about bat flipping and stuff, like the stuff that came up with Tatis last year. Let these guys show some emotion. Let them have some fun. That's what's going to get, views on social media and fans in the crowd because they want to see that kind of stuff. They want to see Tatis Jr. smash one 400 feet to center field and throw his bat as high as he can as the crowd erupts. And baseball's like, slap him on the hand. You can't do that. Or when he's stealing bases. And
Kevin, did you watch any of the Korean Baseball League last year?
No.
Okay, I did.
Oh, the only thing I saw was they had like stuffed animals in the crowd. That was interesting.
Well, so what they did, so in the Korean Baseball League, it's actually part of their tradition to flip bats for home runs. It's part of their tradition to celebrate everything. And I'm watching it at if I can't sleep at 1 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning.
You need your fix of Aaron Altair?
Aaron Altair, Ben Lively was over there. There were some major league players over there. Yeah, sure. But, the thing is that you're watching it and you're like, this is fun. They're out there having fun. And yeah, they have stuffed animals in the seats and they have cheerleaders with masks on dancing on top of the dugouts. They're having fun. Baseball's a game. It's like baseball is so stuffy. Like, we're baseball. We're prim and proper. No, bro, it's baseball. It's a game.
I don't get it. And my whole thing is all the people that are so against the bat flipping and the celebrating, why?
Kevin, if you don't want him to bat flip, Don't let him hit a home run.
Exactly. Yeah. If you don't want to see Tatis Jr. flip his bat and erupt the crowd, don't let him take you yard. It's that simple. It really is that simple. And I don't get it. What's wrong with letting these guys celebrate? That's like if you go to a basketball game and Joel Embiid has a monster poster and he's supposed to just turn around and walk down to the other end of the court.
Act like you've been there before.
Yeah. What? These guys work their entire lives to get where they are. I can't even imagine the rush it is of just completely obliterating a ball as the crowd erupts. And you're going to tell me I can't celebrate? What's next? They're going to make them wear suit and ties because baseball is prim and proper. Like, I don't get it. Baseball.
Well, the manager used to wear a suit and tie.
Maybe Joe Girardi will embrace his Connie Mack vibes and start wearing a suit in the dugout. I don't get it. Why can't these guys celebrate? Why can't they have fun? And then baseball wonders why it's a dying sport. Dude, you're making these guys just, walk the bases like they're literally at work, like they're stuck at some dead-end job. Like, let these guys have some fun. It's going to sell jerseys. It's going to sell tickets. It's going to blast the sport into 2021 because they're still stuck in like 1975, but it's terrible.
He's Kevin McCormick. I'm Josh Hennig here on Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN. Wrapping up the first hour of the show. Get to more of your messages, 609-403-0973. Plus, you can watch the show live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Just follow 97.3 ESPN. We got to talk some Eagles, talk some more Sixers coming on next hour as well, and some more Phillies as well. Sports Bash Saturday, 97.3 ESPN.
Starting this Monday, Sports Bash Cash is back, and it's bigger than ever. You can win cash, our most popular contest, now with 10 chances to win up to $10,000 every weekday. That's right, $10,000. Listen every weekday at 55 after the hour, starting at 9:55 a.m. to 6:55 p.m. to get the codes. The more code words you get, the greater your shot at the grand prize of $10,000. Download the free 97.3 ESPN mobile app for full rules and to enter the codes. Each code word is different, and the more words you enter, the more money you can win. You can't win Sports Bash Cash if you don't listen and play every day. Hear the code words, enter them on our website or with the free mobile app. It's that simple. Sports Bash Cash, 10 times per day, every weekday on 97.3 ESPN, powered by Jersey Shore Federal Credit Union. South Jersey's home of the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
Well, something to think about, for sure.
WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City. A Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN. This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Now, Sports Bash Saturday. Here's Josh Hennig.
Sports Bash Saturday, second hour here on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig live at the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Yes, Matt Blatt Kia, they want to get you approved today. That's Matt Blatt Kia on the Black Horse Pike at Egg Harbor Township. Joined by Kevin McCormick on the stream over here. As you can watch the show live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Talked a lot of Sixers in the first hour. We'll touch a little more Sixers before we get out of here, but we got to get to some Eagles as well, Kevin, because it feels like the Philadelphia Eagles, every time anything happens, they find a way to just wiggle their way back into the news cycle. Last Friday, I'm getting ready. I'm covering for Mike Gill 2 Fridays ago, right, when the Eagles made the trade down. And I'm like, I had all these plans, I had all these papers, all these sheets and everything. And then trade happens. And it's just like that. Ever see that thing? It's just like throw the papers in the air. It's like, whatever, And it's like, all right, well, you know what? That's going out the window. So we're at 12 now. And ever since then, it's just been a whole cavalcade of just stuff going on in response. So I want to know, first of all, what was your reaction when the trade first went down, and how has your opinion at all changed over the last few days since the trade happened at all?
To be honest, I was pretty mad. I saw a lot of Jamar Chase tape and saw some pictures of him working out, and I was like, all right, this dude is a specimen. That's my guy at 6. This is a guy that's going to put some butts in seats and is going to be Jalen Hurts' kind of right-hand man. And if you're paving this next wave of Eagles football, having a quarterback like Hurts and 2 receivers like Chase and Jalen Reagor for him, that would have been fun to watch, but obviously that is now gone. In terms of how different I feel, I kind of want to get your take on this. Hearing everything that went down, it kind of gave me previous Sixers regime vibes. Because remember when the rumors came out that they were going to trade up to 3 and they were looking at that one quarterback. I forget his name off the top of my head, but the fact that they've now gone through Wentz, then it was, Hurts is going to be the guy. Now these rumors are coming out that they were trying to trade up for another quarterback. It seems like there's so many different voices in this front office and even the ownership. When you had me on a couple weeks ago, we were talking about Jeffrey Lurie inserting himself and how that makes sense and such, but it feels like the reports and stuff and this team's being pulled in about 3 or 4 different ways, and everyone's just trying to get their say in what's going on.
So a couple of things there. First of all, I'm glad you brought up the one point, because there's a part of what you said that's been brought up by other people as well, and I want to clear it up. The report about the Eagles' interest in Zach Wilson proved to be false. So for those who don't know, Ian Rappaport reported at 1:35 that day, the Eagles wanted to trade up for Zach Wilson, but once they realized they couldn't, they traded down. Rappaport then tried to wipe the tweet from the internet. As we know, it doesn't work anymore. Then he tweeted a half hour later, well, I got to submit a correction. I didn't mean they were interested in Zach Wilson, but it's that they thought Zach Wilson's a great prospect, and that would push guys down the list when it came to draft picks. Now, remember, this is the same Ian Rappaport now who has got a total of 6. Not 1, not 2. This is like LeBron in Miami. Not 4, not 5. He's gotten 6 Eagles reports wrong. So whoever Ian's source is in the Eagles is an absolute bad source. So we can take the conversation with the Eagles' interest in Zach Wilson and just kind of chuck it behind like I did those pieces of paper I did just a few minutes ago on the video stream here. But the rest of what you said is completely 100% on point, because whether it's the Jeff McClain report that came out a couple of weeks ago about, basically explaining the environment of the Eagles organization, or Chris Mortensen's reports from ESPN about how Jeffrey Lurie's instructing the organization to do certain things, other reports that Jeffrey Lurie wanted J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, reports that Jeffrey Lurie puts Howie out there to take the bullets so he doesn't have to deal with the media sometimes. The whole thing screams, like you said, there's a little Colangelo Sixers here. And that's a great analogy because what was Colangelo? Colangelo was the guy who was supposed to be the extension of the ownership, right? He was supposed to be the guy that cleaned up after Sam Hinkie, quote unquote, even though we're not even really sure how much really be cleaned up because who knows if Sam Hinkie would have stayed here, what actually would have happened. So it's a completely untold, unfinished story. Colangelo comes in here and just starts just blowing it up. It's like, remember back in the day, it was like several years ago. Remember RG3 after he got injured and there was the Gatorade commercial, blow it all up and everything blows up behind him. And he's like returning next season or something like that. Like they made a huge hoopla over him returning from his knee injury. And he never was the same. I feel like Colangelo was the same thing. I think Colangelo watched that commercial too many times and he had this envisionment that he's going to come in Philadelphia and save the day and get them a championship. By the way, speaking of Colangelo, did you see the news? Jerry Colangelo is no longer in charge of USA basketball.
Yeah, it's going to be Grant Hill.
It's now Grant Hill.
I like it.
Another former Dookie. So, but the point is, you made a great point. There is something about the Eagles organization that is just completely disjointed, and no one's really sure who's in charge because at the end of the day, we don't even know who's making the final call because the owner wants to be this like shadow puppet master, and the GM is a guy that everybody hates because he looks, acts, and talks like a non-football guy.
Not to mention Howie already has a bad rep for not being able to draft. So I feel like 6 is a pick that it's really hard to mess up. 12 is a little easier, but is still a lot larger margin of error to mess up. Not to mention, like you brought up, JJ Arcega-Whiteside. They already missed out on DK Metcalf.
Well, the whole league passed on him twice.
True. You can bring up the debate of Rager versus Justin Jefferson. This was your chance to just go get a guy in Jamar Chase at 6 who was just going to be this athletic freak of nature that could hold down this receiver core and be that new, fresh, young receiver along with Rager. And I was a little upset to see them trade down. Yeah, they're going to have multiple picks next season, but if I really had to pick, I mean, that's a guy. He has the size, the build to just be a generational talent at the position.
Well, the other thing is them trading down also puts them in a position to still get a very good player, and that player would be one of those cornerbacks, which to me, now, again, I come from a defensive background. When I played football, I played defense because I couldn't catch the ball. So, obviously, I have a little bit of a bias. But to me, when I watched the Eagles, I saw a secondary that couldn't stop you, me, and a bag of peanuts, all right? And when you got a division now with Kenny Galladay and Darius Slayton and Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, what's that guy's name? Michael Gallup down in Dallas. Who's guarding those guys? And to me, you need somebody out there. And that's why to me, I feel like this was the Eagles' way of saying, we know if we go to 12, we can get a Patrick Surtain II. We can get a JC Horn. I know it's not sexy. I said it on game night. I understand that everyone drives by the car lot and they see the red sports car and they all want it. But in a world where we have high gas prices, insurance is mandatory in the state of New Jersey, and in a world where maybe you want to actually have friends in your car when you go out and do things when this pandemic is done, maybe the red sports car, by the way, red cars get pulled over at a 70% clip higher than any other color car on the road. So maybe getting the red sports car is not the best idea. So I understand Jamar Chase looks sexy and sleek, and he's on the cover of the magazine, but he might not be what you need long-term because you don't want to be like the Saints were in the mid-2000s, going 7-9 for 3 straight years with a Hall of Fame quarterback, Jimmy Graham, and this high-powered offense, and then your defense can't stop a bag of peanuts.
I could agree to that. At the end of the day, defense does win championships, and that defense really did struggle at times. The whole flashy pick, you kind of sold me a little bit there. I feel like it just draws back to the situation with, either trading for Kyle Lowry or getting a George Hill. It's like what makes more sense, the big flashy move or the small move of working the margin. So, I mean, at the end of the day, if you can get another nice young corner to put on the other side of the slate, like you said, there's a ton of receivers that they're going to have to face in the NFC, even in their division alone. So it was a little sad to see me go, but if they can pick up a nice young stud who can hold down the defense, I think it would make the pain of giving away 6 a little easier.
And you know what? You can get a wide receiver later in the draft. I talked about this as well. Guys like Rashawn Bateman, he's probably going in the second round. You know why? Because of all these fraudulent 40 times. Apparently everyone can run a 4.38 now. And so Kadarius Toney and Terrence Mann of LSU, two guys who were definitely second round picks, are probably going to go in the first round now because GMs fall in love with guys. And I think that they might get overpicked. So that might put guys like Bateman or Armand St. Brown from USC, push them down. So you can maybe get them. If you walk out of this draft, for example, with J.C. Horn the first round and Rashawn Bateman, the wide receiver from Minnesota in the second round, I don't think you're going to be too upset. Whereas if you walked out of this draft with, let's say, you were at 6 and you didn't trade down and the Bengals took Jamar Chase ahead of you and you're stuck with your hands at the altar like, I don't know what to do now. At least now going into next year that you have potentially 3 first-round picks. You have a 4th round pick, by the way, this year now. You're not going to pick all 11 of those guys. There's no way Howie Rose was picking 11 guys this year, right? Like, you're going to trade a couple of those picks to move around. So I think there's still a chance for this to be a good draft. I just want to see them play it out before I'm ready to just sign on or sign off on anything. But then again, if they don't go cornerback in the first round, I'll be on Twitter freaking out too.
All I got from that was this is my chance to go out and run an unofficial 40 time and see if I can get an invite to the combine. I would say I'm in pretty good shape. If I can float around a 4.4, maybe Howie Roseman takes a look at me in the second round. So who knows?
I don't know about the second round, but you didn't college football last
listen,
year, so.
If I can get myself on a practice
on you.
Listen, Josh, I'm going to come down there and we're going to find the nearest field and we're just going to do the clicker. You're going to give me an unofficial 40. We're going to put it out on Twitter that I run like a 4.39 and we're just going to tweet it out. We can do the parachute thing too. I'll Photoshop myself sprinting with like TO or something. And we're going to see if I can get an invite to the combine. I'm 24. Now, I'm in that quote unquote best shape of my career at 24 years old. Maybe a team will take a flyer on me.
Maybe you could be a UFA and be invited to camp and be the next Invincible.
Yeah. I'll just be that gritty guy who's just going to work hard and see if he can get his way on. But you did raise a very good point of the safety of moving back to 12 is, like you said, they'd pretty much be all in on Chase at 6. And if Cincinnati decides they want to reunite Jamar Chase with Joe Burrow, like you said, you're pretty much stuck at 6 now. The guy you wanted's already gone, and now you're likely going to reach on somebody, which is just going to have even more scrutiny for Harry. So I agree. You really have to wait to see how the draft plays out before you can really put a grade on it. And if they really want a receiver, there's still a chance that they could get Devontae Smith at 12 if he's there. It'd be cutting it a little close, but he's not the specimen of Chase, but he's got that. He gives me like Kevin Durant Slim Reaper vibes. So that might be able to work out on a football field as like a deep threat with those long arms.
I loved Bateman in college because if you go back and watch Minnesota last night, for those who may or may not know, I am the most OCD obsessive college football guy out there. I watch way more college football than a normal person should. So I watched a good amount of Minnesota the last 2 years. Bateman is a guy that you throw it at him, he attacks the ball. Like, you ever hear that term? The guy attacks the football. He doesn't wait for the ball to come to him. That's the way you're supposed to be taught as wide receivers. He attacks the football. He is a guy who goes up and I would argue that the best go out and get it wide receivers in this draft is Jamar Chase and then Rashad Bateman. Now, Bateman is not the physical freak that Chase is, but he still fills a role, which is he can basically be Alshon Jeffrey without the injuries. So that in and of itself has value. Now, the question is, do the Eagles stay at 37 or do they trade up from there too? Because they also have 2 third-round picks. We've seen teams trade up to the end of the first round before, and we know there's been a lot of talent picked late in the first round, early second round. It was just last year that T. Higgins was picked high in the second round. So I'm not even guaranteeing the Eagles stay at 37. The Eagles might not stay at 12 in the draft. What if the Eagles see someone coming at 9 and they call Denver and they jump in front of the Cowboys again? Remember 2 years ago, or was it 3 years ago, they jumped ahead of the Cowboys and picked Dallas Goedert. What if the Eagles do that again? Then that changes everything. We are still weeks away from the draft. That's why I feel like this idea that Howie's stupid and Howie's a bum, let's let it play out because I think there's a ton of talent in this draft. By the way, you know who's picked 11th overall? J.J. Watt. He's going to the Hall of Fame. You know who's picked ahead of him? Blaine Gabbert and Jake Locker.
Yeah, That's terrible. There's no denying that they still can get a nice talent at 12. I think people are just so caught up of after how last season went down and you end up with that high of a pick that, weeks before the draft, you're already trading down. But I agree. You really have to wait to see how it plays out. If he can get a nice corner or somebody who's just going to come in and fit a need that this organization is looking at, it's pretty much a win for them. But this might make you a little mad, but I have to say it. I think college football is overrated.
Okay, I mean, I'm not going to get mad per se, but
it's just so non-competitive. It's like Alabama, like the top programs are like glorified NFL teams, and you have to sit through like 80% of the season where they beat up these no-name colleges and win by like 65.
All right, let's discuss this a little bit. All right, so you're describing one small segment of the sport. You're not talking about the rest of the sport, like, for example, the competition that is out there week to week. You're talking about specifically that there's only a handful of great top teams, and that's it.
Yeah, pretty much. All like your Alabamas, your LSU. I mean, once bowl season comes around, that's when college season gets good, just because you have all these top programs going at each other, and you have some great national championship games and such. But the guts of the regular season, it's like all these just poor low grade Division I schools just getting steamrolled by these just elite programs.
All right, here's what we're gonna do. So you want me to film you doing a 40 time. I'll make you a deal. Also, when the fall comes around, you got to get your rear end at least closer to me so we can go out and watch a college football Saturday. Okay. That way I can
agree to that.
Okay. Because the idea is that you're not looking to watch Alabama every week. There's a reason why I go almost 66% on my college football picks for the last 3 years, because you find the competitive game, you throw a little something on it, and then you put it on your lineup of games to watch, and then you just kick back in your chair, as I'm going to do here on the stream. You just turn around, you put your feet up, and you're like, all right, man, let's watch some football.
Okay. I'll take that flyer on you just because you're going to get me into the NFL Combine.
He's Kevin McCormick. I'm Josh Hennig here on Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN. And yes, I am wearing Under Armour sneakers, for those who might have seen the logo flash there.
Nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, I'm wearing, for those who might be wondering what the OOTD is for today, it's the Under Armour black and white sneakers with the And One cargo sweatpants from about 10 years ago, because I'm that old. So, and I didn't feel like getting all decked out for work today because I had to get here early, because Billy Schweim's first day back in the studio was today. So I had to get in here and get them all set up and get them all hooked up because they wanted to do stuff. And it's like, oh man, I got to scramble around. So, but I still wore the wrestling style shirt for Kevin McCormick, because I know Kevin is always intrigued by my wardrobe choices when it comes to these wrestling shirts.
I should have wore one of mine. That's a shame on me. I should have had one of mine on. We could have had a nice little theme going.
Well, what are you wearing? Was that a 1980 Phillies shirt?
Yes, sir. A little throwback action. Now that the Phillies are back in action. I wasn't around for it, but, got to pay respects.
It's okay. Neither was I. So we're fine. As long as you know the history, you don't have to live. See, that's the thing. You don't have to live history to know history, okay? You can still go back, like when I was younger. Now you got YouTube and streaming platforms and everything, but back in the day, you could just watch ESPN Classic for 24 hours a day and just catch up on everything, and you would be fine. Like you've already seen Magic Johnson in Game 7 get the tip with the Lakers if you watched on ESPN Classic, or now it's NBA TV with their marquee classic game of the week or whatever it is, and the NHL. By the way, during the pandemic, you had no excuse, right? During the pandemic, every sports channel was playing every old game of all time. So like you can literally just sit back and like watch like the entire Orioles versus Mets 1969 World Series and just lose your mind in that for like an entire 24-hour period, and you would have been fine. So just because you were born then doesn't mean you don't know what happened.
Yeah, I'm in the camp of, as a sports fan, you really got to do your history just to appreciate the game now. Granted, even though I wasn't around for it, I tell people up and down that the 80s is the best decade of professional basketball, and I really don't want to hear anything else.
Now, that's how you feel. Have you read the book Showtime by Jeff Pearlman?
I have not.
Then read it.
I will put it on my list. Quarantine turned me into a big book guy. I've just been tearing through my bookshelf, so I'll have to add that to my list. But Bill Simmons' book of basketball, it was a monster to read. It was like almost 800 pages, but it was absolutely incredible beginning to end. I highly suggest that. Between just the history of it, he kind of redoes the platform of the Hall of Fame, which was really interesting too. But yeah, you definitely have to do your history to appreciate the game that is today.
Yeah, see, I'm a big book reader, but I listen to them on Audible. So I listen to books that I have a long drive to and from work. So it's either podcast or books I'm typically listening to. So unless there's a game on that I'm listening, like Tom McGinnis on 97.3 ESPN. But so what I recommend is Jeff Pearlman wrote Showtime, which is about the Lakers from the late 70s to the early 90s. Then the sequel just came out last year, which I interviewed him for last year, which was the Three Ring Circus, which is the Shaq and Kobe Lakers. So literally you can read those two books back to back, and it's almost like part one, part two of Lakers history. And then after you read those two books, you need to go and read Dream Team by Jack McCallum, which is the full breakdown of everything about the 1992 U.S. Olympic team. And if you read those three books in basically that order, you are going to know more about basketball history than about 90% of the human population.
There's a book I read. It's called When the Game Was Ours, and it's about the whole Bird and Magic rivalry. It's really good too. I'm reading the book now. It's called Basketball Love Story by Jackie McMullen, and it covers everything from the 60s to, the rise of the women's game, the Dream Team, Magic Bird, the Jordan era. It's been phenomenal. But there are a lot of good NBA books if you really want to go back and get your history of people that were in and around it that are just phenomenal reads.
Also, so when the Jordan documentary was on, what I did was I got a Jordan book, as I read a Jordan book as like a companion that dug like even deeper than the Last Dance documentary did. And it actually helped me understand the documentary better, I thought, because like the book goes into more about the Jerry Krause stuff that fully the documentary realizes. People don't realize how whacked Jerry Krause was until you go back in history and like find out about his background and all that kind of stuff. You're right. There's a lot of great books out there. So like you said, you can wear a 1980 Phillies shirt, even though you weren't alive then. You can still talk about it because maybe you did go back on MLB Network or an ESPN Classic back in the day, and you did watch Tug McGraw strike out the side and win the World Series. Or maybe you went back and watched Steve Carlton dominate the Royals back then. That same Royals team won the World Series about 5 years later. So a little history there for everybody.
I forget what I was. During the Last Dance, I was actually reading a Phil Jackson book too. It's called 11 Rings. That was really great. It pretty much dives into Phil Jackson himself, and you really learn about just how crazy of an individual it was. But yeah, that was a good read as well. But do you believe the theory that Jerry Krause is the basis of the main villain from Space Jam?
I think that there might be something to that.
I know that came out when the documentary was going on, but there is a lot of similarities. The way they depicted him in The Last Dance, it really does. It pretty much convinced me that he was the basis of that character.
Oh, here's the book. It's called Playing for Keeps by David Haberstrom. It's all about Jordan's like rise and his impact on the world, and it covers everything from like his childhood to like the end of the Bulls run. So it was a great companion piece when I was watching The Last Dance. And I'm going through my book list and realize how ridiculous I am with all the books I got in here. But, he's Kevin McCormick. I'm Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, the text board is open at 609-403-0973. We are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Just follow 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Kevin writes for 97.3ESPN.com. You want that coverage? Well, if you download the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, you click the app alert section, and you sign up for Sixers updates, you'll get all of Kevin's articles sent right to your 97.3 ESPN mobile app, and it's free. Thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Tomorrow on the NBA on ESPN Radio.
Top of the key three. That's good. Kawhi Leonard splashes one down.
It's an LA showdown at Staples when Kawhi, Paul George, and the Clippers face Andre Drummond and the Lakers.
Rebound, putbacks. That's what his specialty is. This dude is a rebounding machine.
The place is here. The time is now. The top of the world, and I can't come down.
It's the NBA on 97.3 ESPN. Coverage begins at 3 p.m.
We know you're spending a lot of time at home, and maybe that home could use a little TLC. Since going to a home show isn't really a thing right now, 97.3 ESPN FM is bringing the home show to you. Local exhibitors have been setting up in a virtual show featuring the latest products and services for your home. Go to 973ESPN.com to find great articles on home improvement tips and trends. Thanks to our friends at Broadleys Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Broadleys.net, your trusted source for 3 generations.
When you support your local small businesses, it helps keep your neighbors employed, helps kids save for college, and strengthens your community. And Town Square Media South Jersey puts local businesses in the spotlight.
Ambient Comfort Heating and Cooling Professionals. AmbientComfortNJ.com.
Filling Marble and Tile Outlet, Philadelphia Avenue and Route 30 in Egg Harbor City. FillingMarble.com.
Dennisville Fence, serving you since 1952. Be the envy of your neighborhood.
Comfort Now by Bob McAllister. Improve the comfort in your home. Call 609-400-1005 and ask about discounts and rebate incentives. Visit IWantComfortNow.com.
East Coast Roofing, Siding and Windows. Services all of South Jersey. If you call, they'll show up. Call East Coast today at 609-646-1444. Online at eastcoastroofing.com.
Thank you for supporting your local businesses. From Town Square Media South Jersey.
This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig, Sports Bash Saturday here on 97.3 ESPN. 609-403-0973 is text to get on the conversation. I'm joined live here on the show for the full 2 hours. Kevin McCormick at Kevin MCC973. Check out all of his Sixers work over at 97.3 ESPN.com. So I just rewatched the Space Jam 2 trailer during the break, Kevin, and I got to say I'm very confused.
Yeah, I was very indifferent about it. I definitely need to watch it again to kind of fully embrace it, but it was live action, then it was like fully cartooned, and then it wasn't. It was puzzling to me.
Yeah, so for those who haven't seen it or don't know about this, so the Space Jam 2, which is actually Space Jam: A New Legacy is the actual name of it, has been a LeBron James project for several years now. For those who don't know the full story, listen, I've had Scoop B on my show before. He knows a lot of the history of it. He's gotten into it. Brian Windhorst writes about it in his LeBron Inc. book a little bit as well. Basically, LeBron was approached by Warner Brothers a long time ago about doing this. And the prerequisite of them doing it was that LeBron's production company was going to be a part of making it. And a part of the reason why LeBron went to the Lakers was to move his production companies to California so he would be closer to Hollywood and everything for all these production projects he wants to do, including Space Jam. And so this movie was supposed to have maybe come out last year, but they pushed it back because of the pandemic. For those who don't know, a lot of movies are being pushed back right now because the expectation is that movies are not going to come out until the middle of the summer. And because Warner Brother doesn't want to get massacred by a Black Widow, the next Marvel movie coming out, they're pushed Space Jam to the weekend after Black Widow debuts in theaters, which is also the weekend after July 4th, which is the projected date for more things opening. So that's why it's this summer. I got to tell you, though, I am not exactly impressed by this trailer. I feel like there is way too much mishmashing of different things going on. Like you said, like they keep changing places. At one point he's in the real world, that he goes into something like the Matrix, which he actually says in the theater, which they can say because Warner Brothers does own the Matrix, the movie series, which they're coming with a fourth Matrix movie, I think next year, I think it is. But anyway, so by the way, I know way too much about movies. I'll leave that out there. The point is that I'm watching this trailer and I'm like, what is the point is he's getting his son back and the computer guy stole his son? Like, I'm confused, Kevin. I really am.
Not to mention, the basis is his, like you said, his son gets kidnapped by this like internet villain,
which is Don Cheadle.
Josh, they casted someone to play LeBron's son instead of just, hear me out, using one of his two sons. Crazy concept. He has two sons, like in that age range. I know Bronny is he's an upperclassman in high school. I don't know how old Bryce is, but they're both of that age where they could have appeared in that movie, but yet for some reason they were like, nah, we're gonna cast somebody else to play your son and just kind of roll with it. But
Bronny is 16 and Bryce is 13.
Like, couldn't use one of that. Bryce is actually pretty funny. I've seen some videos on Instagram of him kind of acting out. I feel like that's something he could have done nice with, but I feel like it's just one of those movies. It's so tough to recreate. And then the whole narrative behind it's just going to be LeBron's just trying to be like, it's already starting to come out now. The trailer's been out for like not even 12 hours and it's LeBron's just trying to be like Jordan. This movie's going to be terrible, never better than the original. And I feel like it's just a tough act to follow just because the original was just so good all around, from Larry Bird being in it to Bill Murray playing hero at the end. Like, there's just so much of it that you can't recreate.
Yeah, and so a couple of things there as well. Like you said, number one, there's really hard to recreate a lot of what happened. So I'm glad they're not trying to do just like a sequel to that. That being said, what made the first movie so good was that you had a specific scenario. You had a specific, hey, the Monstars are going to imprison Looney Tunes if they lose. And it was Michael Jordan then trading his life for the Looney Tunes and having to win the game. Like, there was a specific storyline going on there. And whereas this is like, okay, so you kidnapped his son because he happened to get off on the wrong floor in the elevator. Like it really does feel like they're trying to like matrix this thing up. Like they're almost trying to like, all right. So a little inside baseball here. So Kevin, I give you full permission to interrupt me if I take this too far. All right. there is a working theory out there in the movie geekdom community that everyone's trying to make a universe now. So like, you know how Marvel, everything is under like one umbrella. There's a theory out there that now Warner Brothers is trying to like make it so like the DC universe and the Matrix and every movie actually works in one multiverse and that they're all connected somehow. So I'm wondering if this movie is like their way of trying to like push that theory forward.
I don't know. It sounds very confusing. My only thing with after watching the trailer is
more critical of me than that. You can just tell me how stupid that was.
It's a lot to digest, but I don't fully count it out. I do agree. I feel like the craziness of how well Marvel's been able to tie things back from, you know, stuff like WandaVision in the movies and such has done well, and maybe they are trying to do it, maybe they're not. My only thing after watching that trailer is, do you think they're trying to do too much to be better than the original?
I think they're trying too hard to be different than the original. You know what I mean? Like they're trying too hard to be like, we're Space Jam, but we're not Space Jam.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just one of those things where in a world where there's so many movies that should have had a sequel and like there's endless, I feel like Space Jam is just one of those where it should have just been a one-off. I get the whole fad of Hollywood going through now of revamping everything, so like
everything.
So like this generation has their version of the movie, but I mean Space Jam was a classic. It's just you can't top it. Is, you know, like you said, the storyline, it was clear, concise, you know, you had the fun of it all, legends like Larry Bird in it, Bill Murray, like there was just, I don't get why they were trying so hard to just recreate this.
He's Kevin McCormick. I'm Josh Hennig on Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ES. We do have some texts to get to from a little bit earlier in the show, some of our conversations. 609-403-0973. To get on the conversation, 609-403-0973. Steve chimes in about the Eagles conversation, says, hey, Josh, it's Steve. If Micah Parsons is there at 12, is he the pick? The problem with that is the Eagles have never drafted a linebacker high in the draft since I think it's like 1978, 1979. So like, I just feel like it's like so low on like how they think. I mean, I think it would be a interesting move. I think it would tell us a lot about Jonathan Gannon's defense, but I mean, I get it. He's from Penn State. There is something to throw in there, Kevin, and that is there are some concerns about Micah Parsons off the field. There have been some reports and conjecture out there that he's a bit of a problem child. I know he's trying to like rectify that like perception out there, but he is not a clean prospect, to say the least.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that stuff too, that there is that question of how he's going to be off the field. And I feel like it's a tough gamble to take on with this organization that's going through so much turnover and all these new faces and new leadership. I feel like throwing a guy that has a chance to be a problem child in the middle of all of that is kind of concerning. And after hearing you kind of dive into a little bit earlier, I feel like if they are going to go defense at 12, that picking up another corner would make a lot more sense, not only for the sake of that's where a lot of the good corners are going in terms of mock drafts, but just it's a need of what you're going to need to be competitive in this division.
Yeah, and the other thing is they do need linebacker. Like I think we all understand that, but Micah Parsons, if you don't end up with him, it doesn't mean you can't end up with like a Xavion Collins or a Tarat from University of North Carolina. Like there are other linebackers in this draft you could end up with. You know, you don't have to pick them in the. I think the problem is sometimes, you know, people only think about the first round pick and they forget about the rest of the draft. Like Jason Kelce was, I think, a 6th round pick. Jalen Mills was a 7th round pick. Jordan Mailata was a 7th round pick. These are starters for your team you found later in the draft. I'm not saying you should totally forget about the first round, but listen, you can find talent elsewhere. So if you don't line up with a linebacker, quarterback, wide receiver in the first round, as long as it's not a quarterback, I'm fine with it.
And I feel like linebackers kind of like just a serviceable position. That might kind of sound like a hot take, but I feel like when you hear about star defensive players, you're hearing about your edge rushers or just, you know, these great corners where you don't really hear about that much about the linebacker position outside of a guy like Luke Kuechly, who was just phenomenal. So I feel like that's just one of those serviceable positions where there's a lot of guys out there that you could go in and fill into your system that are just going to give you a nice output.
Well, it's also a very specific position. It's a position where a guy does a specific thing or two or three. Like Alex Singleton last year, it was so obvious that he was a well-rounded linebacker, but the fact that he was your best linebacker was a problem. Like you need a well-rounded linebacker, but you also need someone who can cover people. Like I know everyone loves Xavier Collins from Tulsa because he's big, he's strong, he's explosive. So is Jabril Cox. I know Cox is a much better coverage linebacker. Collins is probably a better hitting, tackling linebacker, more of a blitzer. So to me, it kind of depends on what this defense is going to require, because we know we got a whole new defensive coordinator coming in here. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles come out of this draft with a guy like Justin Hilliard from Ohio State who may go in the second or third round, as opposed to Micah Parsons, partly because of the fact that maybe Parsons doesn't fit what you want to do with your defense. We don't know what the defense is going to look like yet. It's supposed to be some amalgamation of the Colts and the Vikings, I guess. I don't know. Nobody really knows.
Listen, all I know is anything better than Nick Airy playing linebacker is an upgrade. So I agree with you. I really liked Alex Singleton and what he gave last year, but anything from Nick Airy is going to be an upgrade. So I feel like the bar is set very low of how the Eagles can improve at linebacker.
609-403-0973. Dan EHT was very unhappy with our opinion earlier about bat flips. Dan EHT says, no way. Bat flips gets you 90 miles per hour to the ear hole next to that bat. It's easy to say the bat flip and showboat like playing wiffle ball, but not when you have a hard baseball.
So it's okay that actually, no, I'm just going to scratch everything what I was going to say. It comes down to the pitcher's allowed to retaliate because it's the old school written rules of baseball. To said pitcher, you don't have to throw that 90-mile-an-hour fastball at a dude's face if you don't let him take you 400 feet to center field. It's like we said at the top of the show. If you don't want these guys to bat flip, don't let them take you a yard, and then you don't have to pat on the mound and throw behind guys and get suspensions and stuff. I don't get why these guys aren't allowed to celebrate for playing at the highest level of their sport.
Yeah,
every other sport allows their players to showboat except baseball.
Right. And I think, listen, I understand Dan MHC where he's coming from, but let the guys have fun. Let them bat flip. Let them go out there and let pitchers get funky after they strike a guy out. Let's get some fist pumps.
Yeah.
Let's get some screams. Like, who is it? Fernando Rodney used to do the shooting of the arrow after a save, or oh my goodness, who was the one guy who was like really ridiculous after his strike? He would strike out a guy and like walk off the mound and like start screaming. I forget the guy's name off the top of my head.
Didn't Brian Wilson, the closer for the Giants, always used to do something crazy when he struck dudes out?
He would do something. It was K-Rod. K-Rod used to scream after like he would get a strikeout to like end an inning or end a game. Almost like he was like celebrating afterward. It's like it's okay for the pitcher to do it, but not the hitter. Like I'm with you, Kevin. I think if it's if one guy can do it, not the other guy. And honestly, I want to see more emotion from my players. Let's show a little humanity to the masses. These baseball players are not a bunch of statues out there.
And it shows that they care. I mean, when you get to like see them like really embrace what's going on and feed off the crowd and stuff, I feel like it makes fans want to go to games more because they feel like they're a part of the action. That's the whole point of buying a ticket and going to a game as opposed to watching TV, of being in the atmosphere and being able to kind of play off the crowd and the fans around you. If the players aren't able to do that, what's the point of a fan perspective of spending their hard-earned money to go see these guys in person when they can just watch on TV if there's no difference of experience?
Listen, you got to give them a reason to get off of their cell phones when they're sitting in the crowd. You know what I mean? Like, if you go to an NBA game, there's a reason why people put their phones down. Football, they put their phone down. The last time I went to a baseball game, Kevin, nobody put their phone down almost the entire game. Everyone's just like do on their phone because there was no reason for them to put the phone down.
And I feel like there's just become such a casual nature of baseball where I feel like the way fans go to a basketball game or a football game, they don't typically go to a baseball game. It's just one of those, it's the summer months, it's outdoors, it's something to do. I mean, maybe you tailgate, maybe you don't. You go, you just kind of hang out, casually watch the game, walk the concourse, stuff like that. So I feel like just the vibe of going to a baseball game is much different compared to a baseball or a basketball or a football.
I want to get one more text in here before we hit the break. 609-403-0973. This is probably the most predictable text of the day. Makes sense to me. LeBron isn't as good as the original in basketball and movies.
Oh, man.
Shocker.
Shocker.
On the other side, You want to talk some GOAT? You want to talk about LeBron stands among GOATs?
Yeah, sure. I have an interesting take on the whole LeBron should be.
All right, you hold that. Hold that. We'll hit that on the other side. He's Kevin McCormick at MCC973 on Twitter. I am at Josh Hennig on Twitter. This is Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN live in the Matt Black Kia studios. Matt Black Kia, they want to get you approved today. Matt Black Kia on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township.
Westwood One is your exclusive home for the 2021 NCAA tournament. It's only fitting that a season unlike any other comes to a conclusion in the most unique circumstances. From 68 teams down to one, all in the same state. Every basket, buzzer beater, and bracket buster until a champion is crowned. Who will take home the title? Tune in to find out. All the excitement of March Madness right here.
It's the Final Four later today on 97.3 ESPN. Coverage begins at 4:30.
Get the credit you deserve during Matt Blatt Kia's Madness in March sales event with 0 down and 0% APR financing for 75 months. Get to Matt Blatt Kia in Toms River and Egg Harbor Township, because at Matt Blatt Kia, we want to get you approved today. And you can't make a mistake with our 4-day love it or leave it return policy. Plus, we want your trade, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. So get out of that old car you hate. Come in today or visit us online and get the credit you deserve. Put 0 down and get 0% APR financing available for up to 75 months on every new 2021 Kia Sportage, or take $2,500 off MSRP, because
it's gotta be a Matt Black Kia.
Offers with approved Tier 1 or 2 credit through Kia Motors Finance. Not all will qualify. 0% based on $1,333 for $1,000 borrowed. All Kia Motors factory rebates to dealer. Go to mattblackkianj.com for complete details. Expires 4/5/2021. Matt Blatt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, and now on Route 37 in Toms River.
I'm Sanjata Seiko, and I'm proud to be a member of the New Jersey Education Association. So my students are much more than a teacher. I'm a mentor, role model, and sometimes even a father figure. In New Jersey, over half of our students are children of color, yet only 16% of those teachers are. I'm encouraging high school and college students of color to join me. Be a teacher, make a difference. To learn more, visit njea.org/careers in education. This message is sponsored by the New Jersey Education Association, the New Jersey Broadcasters Association, and this station.
This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia studios. Here's Josh Hennig.
Final segment of the show, Josh Hennig along with Kevin McCormick here on 97.3 ESPN. Thanks to all the texts that came in throughout the show. It's been a fun 2 hours here on 97.3 ESPN. Now, Kevin, you said you have an interesting take on this LeBron Jordan GOAT conversation. I'm intrigued because I also have a very interesting take on this conversation. So I want to hear yours first, though.
So I don't know if it's an interesting take, but here is my grand scheme argument of putting LeBron James in the GOAT conversation. First off, it's hard to gauge him and Jordan right now because LeBron's story is still being written. Obviously, you can't have the full debate in its entirety until LeBron finally decides to hang it up. But the way I look at it right now is LeBron James is on pace to do something that nobody in the history of the sport has ever done before, and that is dominate the league for 2 full decades. LeBron, even right now, although he's hurt right now, year 18, still leading the Lakers to a title. He won the ring last year. Although he has all the finals losses on his record right now, I feel like once you retire, your finals losses don't really hang on to your resume the way they do while you're still playing. Like when you look at a Larry Bird, you don't talk about all the times he lost in the finals. Same with Magic. So the fact that when LeBron hangs it up, the success he's had, the longevity that he's had, and the fact that he, for the span of 2 decades, not only played in the league, but was, in the upper echelon of talent for that long, I think is why he has a very good chance to be looked at as the guy that goes down as the greatest ever.
Okay. I mean, I don't think that's extreme, but I think it's definitely interesting. So my perspective is I think LeBron is on the Mount Rushmore, but I don't have him as my one. But I also don't have Jordan as my number one.
Is it Kareem?
It is Kareem. I think Kareem is the greatest of all time because number one, Kareem did what he did longer. Number two, Kareem was never stopped until he got old, basically. Now, I understand that he won some of his championships thanks to Magic Johnson, but again, Jordan won with Scottie Pippen and LeBron won with Kyrie Irving, Dwayne Wade, and Anthony Davis. So you need a sidekick no matter what. And third of all, if you look at all of the other two's accomplishments, Jordan and LeBron's, Kareem has done all of those things as well, basically. And let's not forget, he was a phenomenal athlete. Kareem did track and field at 7 foot tall. And Kareem was an accomplished martial artist black belt at 7 foot tall. So it's not like he was some stiff guy who happened to play in an era where nobody could keep up with him. No, he was the greatest athlete of his generation of big men, and he happened to be the all-time leading scorer.
Not to mention, he still has the most automatic 2 points in the history of the game with his sky hook. But I agree. I feel like he is the one underrated name when you're really talking to GOAT conversation. Even if you look at the whole, he won multiple national titles in college too. Was completely successful as a pro. If you look at the entire rap sheet, Kareem is definitely the name that isn't thrown around enough. And I feel like part of it's just because I think why Jordan ascended to the way he did and became the icon that he did is that he was the star at the right time of the popularity of the NBA was really starting to skyrocket. And you just had this great guy that you could pin to be like the poster child of it all and be just that iconic guy. And, the mix of the popularity, the success, the marketability of Jordan is what created this whole persona that made him be looked at as the without a doubt greatest of all time. And my only real question with the Jordan LeBron thing is, do you think LeBron James is obsessed with being the greatest player of all time the same way Michael Jordan was? Because whether you watch The Last Dance, you read all the books, all the articles, Michael Jordan really was obsessive of becoming great and always being that guy. So that's the main thing that really separates me with that is I really don't know if I can say that LeBron James obsesses about it the same way that Michael Jordan did.
I always say that Jordan is the greatest competitor I've ever seen on a basketball court. LeBron might be the greatest physical talent, like the physical ability I've ever seen on a basketball court. Those do not always equal being the greatest basketball player, though. And I think that's where I kind of draw. I like what you said, that Jordan was obsessed with greatness. I think LeBron is obsessed with being the best version of himself. Because if you go back and read like books on LeBron, like Brian Windhorst's 2 books on LeBron, or listen to LeBron, what was that series that he did with him and Maverick Carter where he talked about things? Not the barbershop one, the other one on ESPN Plus. More Than a Game.
Mm-hmm.
More Than a Game. LeBron views himself as more than a basketball player already. Jordan only became the mogul later in his career. LeBron has always been kind of keeping the eye on the business side from day one. So I kind of have to wonder, LeBron, he may work as hard as, if not more harder than anybody to be great and keep his body in shape and do all the things he does, but he has other interests outside of being great on the bet. He wants to be great at everything, right? Jordan was such a psychotic competitor. He wanted to win at poker. He wanted to win at pool. He wanted to win at golf. He wanted to win at basketball. He would make you keep playing him until he beat you. All right. So like, that's one of those things where like, to me, the drive is different. And I think that's where you're right. I think the each guy's, their ultimate goal is different. And that's why it's hard to compare them, because it's apples and oranges.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and it's tough to kind of knock LeBron for, keeping that eye on the business side just because of seeing how well that Michael Jordan did it and the brand that he created. I assume he wanted to do something similar for himself. But yeah, I agree. Just that obsessiveness of being great and just wanting to win at all costs, I feel like it's still the thing that separates Michael Jordan from LeBron James. But on the other end, if you think about it, Michael Jordan had a lot easier rise to grace than LeBron James did. Michael Jordan got to learn under Dean Smith at UNC. He got to have that natural progression of young talent to superstar that you do typically see, while LeBron James at 17, 18 years old was crowned the savior of the league. I mean, King James was from when he was 18 years old. So the fact that he had the bar set so high for him from the beginning, and he really has lived up to expectations still now, almost 20 years later, as crazy as that sounds, is just phenomenal.
All right, Kevin, will Joel Embiid play tonight, yes or no?
I think so. I think he makes his return tonight against Minnesota.
Does he play tomorrow night?
I do not think so.
More over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Kevin McCormick's work at KevinMCC973. Eventually, we will get Kevin to run a 40-yard dash. Kevin will watch sports with me.
College football. Josh will embrace me into the beauty that is college football.
Kevin, I appreciate you doing these 2 hours with me. It was a lot of fun, I thought.
No problem. It was a blast. I will gladly come on again.
Well, don't tempt me with a good time. All right, coming up today on 97.3 ESPN. The Final Four is today. Coverage at 4:30 on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, don't forget tomorrow, Billy Schweim in the locker room, 10 a.m. the noon. Sixers basketball at 7 p.m. tomorrow night here on 97.3 ESPN FM.
It's Sixers basketball tomorrow on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McGinnis, calling all the exciting play-by-play action.
Turning, hanging, firing, it's good! Tobias Harris, he can't be stopped in OT!
The Sixers host the Memphis Grizzlies tomorrow night.
Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Philadelphia 76ers basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN.